In today's video, I'm going to talk about a couple of countries with zero corporate tax. Now, we hear a lot with countries talking about establishing a global tax, but luckily we still have some countries that do not levy any tax on the corporations. First, let's be on the same page. Corporate tax is a tax levied on corporations, and it usually is levied on the net profit, or what we call income minus the expenses. So different countries can define income and expenses differently, but the general understanding is still the same. You have income coming, the revenue that you get from your clients, and the expenses that you need to make sure that you deliver the goods and the services that you have to provide to your client. So with that out of the way, let's dive into some countries that have zero corporate tax. The first logical question is, why would a country choose to have 0% tax and say no to certain revenue that they would be otherwise getting? The first answer to that, and the first reason, is that they are using that to attract some business in their jurisdictions. They want foreign capital to come to their country and establish business, hire people, create jobs, etc. One other reason may be that sometimes the countries are trying to attract businesses in their country with 0% corporate tax to make sure that they use some other programs. For example, citizenship by investment. So in some countries, you can see that they have the corporate income tax at 0, but they also have the citizenship by investment program that can compensate the difference in the revenue, and in some cases can be even more beneficial for the country than just levying the different taxes on corporations. In some cases, we can also say that even though the country has 0 corporate tax, it can be taxing like personal income or property or capital gains or some other items that can compensate the revenue for the country. So a 0 corporate tax doesn't mean that the country doesn't get any money out of the taxpayers, but it just can be gathered at a different stage. So no doubt that 0% tax is very attractive. However, based on our experience, it doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything in that country and for that tax authorities. Like in some cases, you do have to file some reports and paperwork, and even though based on the paperwork you do not have to pay anything, but if you don't follow the rules and don't comply with them, you do have some penalties to pay, and it can vary depending on different countries. So the first country that I'm going to talk about with 0% corporate tax is the Cayman Islands. So the Cayman Islands doesn't have any corporate tax, it doesn't have any capital gains tax or any withholding tax on dividends and interest. So it's a very good tax-wise, and it is also a very reputable destination. It can be a bit expensive to establish a company there, and the maintenance fees can be a bit high, but it definitely pays off with the reputation that it holds. With regards to taxation, there are a couple of different regimes. You can establish an exempt company, and that is going to be very attractive for you if you want to not engage in any business on the islands and you just want to work with your international clients. You're not going to be on the islands physically. You can also choose a special economic zone company, and that is going to be very attractive to you if you have any crypto assets, because they are very crypto friendly. And generally, Cayman Islands has some good banking options, maybe a bit more expensive, and you do have some options outside of the Cayman Islands to bank for your corporate accounts. Another good country or jurisdiction with 0 corporate tax is British Virgin Islands. So BVI is a country that has a very good reputation. It's a classical offshore, as we call it. It is rather easy to establish a company there. They have 0% corporate tax. Also, you don't have to pay any tax on the dividend and withholding salary, or when you own the company, if you withhold the salary for yourself, it's also tax-free. And you can also enjoy all these benefits as long as you don't have BVI clients. So I think that's one important detail that you have to pay attention to. BVI is also attractive because it doesn't have any audit requirement, so the maintenance of the company is rather easy. It's English speaking, so it's really easy to communicate and manage from afar. So overall, it's one of the jurisdictions that we often recommend to our clients, as it is easy to maintain, rather cheap, and very beneficial with what you have to pay for that. We cannot really talk about 0 corporate tax without mentioning the UAE. Even though they have the new 9% tax from June 2023, you can still structure your company and revenues in a way that you do enjoy the 0% corporate tax, because you have to just follow their instructions about qualifying and non-qualifying income, and if you do that, you can enjoy the 0% corporate tax. UAE has lots of free zones. You are free to choose from any, and they do differ based on the fees and maintenance and some paperwork that you have to file, but generally they provide the same opportunities. Also, for the free zone for the UAE, I would be very careful with choosing the activities, because in certain cases and for some activities you do have to file and provide some other statistical reports or compliance forms. So just pay attention and make sure that you know other non-tax paperwork that you have to comply with in the UAE and just generally in any other country. One other country I would mention is Hong Kong. Hong Kong does have a corporate tax at 16.5%. Hong Kong also has offshore profit tax claim, where you can claim 0% tax on your profits from offshore business. So basically, if you don't have Hong Kong clients and you are not physically there, you can claim a 0% tax on all your revenue that's not derived from Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong does have audit requirement, so for you to enjoy the 0% tax claim, you have to file audited financial statements. Authority has the proof that you are not really having any revenue within Hong Kong. Panama and Singapore are two of the countries that are maybe worth mentioning here, because even though they do not have 0% tax, they have territorial tax regime. What it means is that as long as you don't have income from these territories, you can enjoy 0% tax. So if you structure your business carefully and smartly, you can effectively enjoy 0% tax in those countries. Another entity I want to mention and jurisdiction that I want to mention is the US, and it may come to you as a surprise, but you can structure your US entity in a way that you are effectively paying 0% tax on corporate income. But you have to be very careful how to structure that. First thing you have to be aware of is that you have to own the the US entity through an offshore company, so that you can claim that the entity in the US is disregarded for the tax purposes, and all the revenues are taxed in the 100% shareholder that is offshore. In the US, you can establish an LLC and structure it in a way that it's going to be your payment processing LLC. So basically, this LLC will receive the payments from your clients and enjoy all the banking and payment opportunities that US has to offer. And it can also be the payment processing entity for your expenses and payroll, etc. But because this entity will be owned by a company offshore, for example, in like certain other jurisdictions that we said, like UAE, Hong Kong, BVI, etc. All the revenues for the US LLC will be taxed up in those jurisdictions, and basically the US LLC will be disregarded for tax purposes. Now, this does mean that you don't have to pay any tax, but it means that you still have to file some forms. And the US, they have Form 5472 that you have to file for this LLC to make sure that you are compliant. And you do have to file that annually. One other thing with this structure is that you have to be very careful with other things that you are doing in the US, because if you are physically there, if you have employees there and you are generating revenue there, this structure may not work for you. There are certain nuances that you have to pay attention to make sure that you are indeed regarded as like disregarded entity for tax purposes. In general, we saw that there are a few countries that you can choose from that offer a 0% corporate tax, and 0% corporate tax always very attractive, but you have to always make sure that you take into consideration your personal and corporate structure and what you have already set in place and what your goals are. And with that in mind, I always recommend to get professional advice when structuring your offshore business. And here at Nomad Capitalist, we do have lots of knowledge and are eager to provide you with solutions to your problems.